Welcome everyone to the final go-to session. Okay, so this is the fourth and final go-to session of the month, which means we're almost at the end of the course. Yay! This session, as I mentioned to the people who are already in the room, is going to be pretty short. I really just have some final reminders to make. First, let me note that I sent out an announcement earlier that I'm still making my way through the essays. I apologize. It's taking a long time to get through them. You'll see when you receive my feedback exactly why it takes so long. I'm not making excuses. I should speed up my process, but I give people lots of feedback, and that takes time. Okay, so I'm writing typically probably about a page or two for every single student. So, do the math, right? That amount of writing times 75 students, it just takes a while. I've been working all day. I'll probably be working late into the night. I might need a little bit of time tomorrow, but my plan is, yeah, by either tonight or tomorrow, everybody will have received feedback. And that gives you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to work on the revision. And the revision is the final project for this class, okay? There are some other small requirements, which we're going to cover in this session, but the gist of it is for you to take the feedback that you received. You should have received feedback from your peers, and soon you'll be receiving feedback from me if you haven't already. And you'll use that feedback, decide what makes sense, what doesn't, and put some effort into honest revision. That's the main task for the final project. Just out of curiosity, how many people here received feedback from your peers? And if so, how do you think that feedback went? Was it worthwhile? I, was pretty straightforward and even stern last week during the go-to session, reminding people of what was expected for peer review. So hopefully we didn't have problems with people just writing 2 or 3 quick sentences or just rubber stamping some quick remarks, but people actually trying to give each other valuable feedback. How did things go on your end, people? Jared says he was happy with what people said about his writing. Okay, good. So peer feedback sounds like it was valuable for Jared. If anybody else wants to weigh in, feel free to do so. We only have 3 people in the room tonight. Okay, well, I'm waiting for people possibly to make comments. I'm going to move forward and get into tonight's session. Okay, so as you can see on the screen here, we're talking about revision. Okay, so we're talking about the essay that you handed in a week ago and you're going to get feedback on soon. Your main task is to improve it. If we think about the word revision, okay, you look at that word, you see that the word vision is in there, okay? And you probably know that that prefix RE means to do things again or to do things over, right? That's why we have words like repeat, redo, excuse me, some other words that just aren't coming to mind right now. But yeah, when we see that word revision, we see the word vision. So we're basically looking at things anew. Okay, we're seeing things again in a different way. This is quite a bit different than editing. Editing. Okay, editing is what, for example, people do, and people get paid to edit. Remember last week we talked about global issues versus local issues? That global issues refer to the big picture aspects of a paper. So focus, organization, thesis, even just very basic things like are you meeting the requirements for the assignment? Or if it's outside of school, are you meeting the demands of what that specific writing mode calls for? Okay, so big picture stuff that has to be addressed first, because if those things aren't fixed, the writing is probably in some sort of trouble. Editing means focusing on the smaller stuff. That means proofreading and making sure commas are in the right spaces, that kind of fun stuff. So one of the things that I want to stress here is that the final project is about revision, not editing. I'm going to show the assignment sheet in just a second, but there are, in fact, penalties for just making quick surface level changes and not really tackling the bigger picture issues that exist in the paper. I'm going to go ahead and anticipate a question some of you might have already. Well, what if you do if your paper is already in outstanding shape? Do I really have to write the paper all over again? No. I'll say that it's pretty rare. I'm teaching 3 classes this term, so that's 75 students. I might, if I'm very lucky, out of 75 students, there might be 5, okay, out of 75 whose paper is already in such solid shape that, yeah, they probably have to spend more time with editing issues. The other 70 students, however, have to focus on revision. Okay, looking at their paper again. Maybe there's a section that was underdeveloped, or maybe the paper just wasn't doing what the assignment was asking for, or maybe topics shifted within a single paragraph, right? The first one of the paragraphs starts out just fine talking about X, and then halfway through it jumps to a completely different topic. Okay, so issues like that would need to be fixed, repaired to the best of your ability. That's revision. Christopher makes a joke saying his paper is perfect if you don't read it. Yeah, that's typically how it works, right? It's awesome if we don't actually have to look at it. I haven't gotten your paper yet, Christopher, so maybe it is in great shape. Okay, so yeah, just remember that. Okay, we're working on revision, not just editing. There is a penalty if you just hand in the same paper again, or if you hand in the same paper again with just minor changes. Okay, I'm not saying I know we're all busy. I know we're all excited about the holidays. It is not my goal to chain you at a desk and make you do work that's that's not required. Okay, but yeah, most of you probably will have some work to do in the area of revision. And if you're just fixing some quick things here and there that take possibly a grand total of 10 or 15 minutes, that's not revision. So be careful. Be careful about this too. Yes, your main task is to revise the paper. Okay, and I should add too, revise means top to bottom. Okay, so big picture issues. But it doesn't matter. Let's say you do have some really big picture issues to work on the paper. You still have to focus on matters of editing. I did not want to suggest that editing is not important at all. Obviously, if the paper is riddled with errors, if it wasn't proofread the first time around, you want to make sure that it's proofread this time around. Same thing, for example, with APA feedback. Excuse me, it's feedback that I might have given you about APA style. Most students do a pretty good job. They sometimes get small details a bit wrong here and there, so those would need to be fixed, okay, for the revision. Some students are farther off, either because they never watched the APA walkthrough video that I sent out, or they didn't access the other several documents that were made available that dealt with APA, and what's handed in is largely just an invented style of the student's own. Well, that would have to be fixed, okay? This is your chance to show that the small things or big things, or mixture of the two, that existed in your first draft get corrected in the revision. Okay, so we're talking about top to bottom. But in addition to revising, there's also a short essay that you have to write. So I'm going to switch to the actual assignment sheet. Bear with me. I think I have it open. Here we go. So here is the week 4 revision assignment sheet. As you can see, it's called revising and reflecting because these are the two main activities. You have to revise your paper and reflect on what you've done this month. I'm going to skip past the introduction because you can read this on your own. As always, make sure that you are reading assignment sheets. I'm always a bit surprised and shocked when students don't read the assignment sheets, and it's painfully clear that they haven't. I mean, I try my best to cover as much as I can during the go-to sessions because some students learn better if someone's speaking out loud or if someone's using visual aids. But yeah, it never can entirely replace basic steps like reading the actual assignment instructions. So here we go, instructions. The final assignment consists of a revision of your first essay along with a reflection on your work for the course. So we're talking about 2 documents. First, your revised essay in APA style. So you're going to have the cover page, the references page, and your essay itself will be revised, again, from top to bottom. Big picture issues, small picture issues, APA issues, all that's going to be repaired to the best of your ability before you hand it in Sunday night at midnight. Second, you're going to write a short reflection essay that explores what you've learned about the writing process and what you have done this month. Okay? And yeah, pretty much you have the entire week, this week that is, to reflect on this. This week's pretty light. I realize that I still have to get to you, some of you, feedback on your essay, but you guys are pretty much done. You can take like a nice big breath of deep, you can take a deep breath of air because the bulk of the hard work is behind you. Yes, you have to take kind of one final gulp of air to work on the revision, but this week is purposely light. Okay, the peer review discussion board is finished. You just have to make sure that you finish that final McGraw-Hill module if you haven't already. There's one final weekly check-in, which is pretty much a breeze because the questions are more subjective this week. So you have one more of those to take. But otherwise, it's free for you to work on revision and to write the short reflection. Now, what do you put in your reflection? Well, the next page includes what you need to talk about. Okay, right here, reflect on what you have learned. And even gives instructions like add a new page to the end of your document after the references page, title it reflection, and write a reflection essay. Note the word essay. Okay, so you're still going to follow APA formats. It means you're going to be writing in paragraphs. Those paragraphs are going to be double spaced. The opening line of a new paragraph is indented. Okay, the word reflection is going to be centered at the top of the page. It's not going to be underlined. It's not going to be bolded. It's not going to be italicized. Okay, all that stuff that you learned for APA style in the essay applies to the reflection, and it should be quite simple. You're just adding on a new page. So put your cursor at the end of the very last line after your final reference. Keep hitting enter until you get to a brand new page. Stop, type and center the word reflection. Hit enter once, and you can start typing your reflection essay. And you have to address these questions, okay? There are 6 of them, although some of them contain multiple questions, like what were you expecting from English this month? Did the class meet your expectations? And so on. How did your essay change during the month? Okay, how does your final version show your progress? How do you feel that how well do you think you've met the requirements of the class? Okay, is there anything you're proud of? Is there anything you would do differently? So they're pretty subjective questions. As long as you're answering them honestly and with some depth, it's pretty much impossible to do poorly on the reflection. The only time students do poorly on the reflection is when they don't write one, or when they're not really answering the questions, or they're answering it with just a few words. Sometimes not even writing complete sentences. They're just racing through these prompts. But if you take time to answer them thoughtfully in paragraph form, you should be just fine. Okay, so does that make sense that we're talking about 2 major pieces here, your revised essay and the short reflection, kind of tacked on to the very end? Let me show the rubric for 1 second for this assignment. If you haven't been paying attention to these all month, every single activity for this class comes with a rubric, so you can see exactly what you need to do to score the maximum amount of points in each of the areas that you're graded on. So here's the rubric for the final assignment. What I want to point out, though, is this stuff at the bottom. Okay, so let me blow that up a little bit. First, the typical stuff. 5 points are deducted anytime you basically make really silly errors. Like you start writing in text speak cause instead of because, or lowercase I instead of the capital I for the pronoun, well, I. Okay. Not including apostrophes in contractions like I've or couldn't or didn't, not beginning a sentence with initial capitalization, like really basic stuff that you learned way back in the first grade, because usually that's an indication that you were just, I don't know, I shouldn't say you, that a student is just typing away and who knows, maybe they're working on a mobile device, which tends to encourage those sorts of errors. Be careful. I'm pretty much a softie, and I'm usually giving students a break if I see 1 or 2 of these types of errors. But yeah, you don't want your essay or your reflection to be filled with these kinds of basic errors. What I wanted to point out was this here. That there's a penalty for missing components. Okay. Is this it? Yeah, actually, let me make that smaller. I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth here. Basically, any missing component results in a 20-point deduction. You don't include the reflection, that's a 20-point loss. So make sure that you write that short reflection essay. Handing in the same paper again, right? You haven't truly revised, or what you're handing in as a revision hardly meets the definition of revision. That's also a 20-point penalty. So be careful. I'm pretty generous in my grading, and I think I'm pretty kind. But one way in which I do sort of get angry is when I see papers just handed in again that are either unchanged or largely unchanged. Like, it's pretty shocking when, let's say, a student received a somewhat low grade for the APA category regarding the essay, and none of that's been fixed in the revised version. Or some of you who have received feedback already, you've noticed that I leave comments in your actual paper. I don't point out every error, but I do point out issues here and there. And it's always shocking when I get the revised paper and the comments that I pointed out are still there, right? Uh, the grammar concerns or the proofreading errors, the stuff that I spent time pointing out haven't been changed. So yeah, be careful, because there are students who lose anywhere from 20 to 40 points for just making these really really simple errors. We're near the end of the term. I know everybody wants to be done with this class. I know everybody's excited about the holiday, but just don't take it too easy, okay? Instead, push yourself to get to the finish line, and then take it easy. I see students kind of let up the final week, and with good reason, right? I mean, the essay took a lot of work. You spent time researching, you spent time drafting, you just got done with peer review. It kind of feels like you have this giant weight off your shoulders. Am I correct? It feels good. But yeah, that can be a false sense of security, because students sometimes think that they're all done, and we're not. So keep that in mind. Okay, let me go back to my presentation and let me take a sip from my drink, because I'm getting really, really dry. Okay. So we just talked about the reflection requirement, right? There's a short essay you have to write. So let's skip past this slide. Oh, okay. I guess the newest version. The keynote presentation already has what I showed you, so I didn't have to go there. I'm just going to fly ahead a little bit, because I spent a little bit more time than I wanted to on that last section. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the revision process. You might remember, for peer review, I said that one of the awesome things about online learning is that because it doesn't happen in real time, you can carve out the time and space to work on things. So for peer review, I said that there really wasn't much of an excuse not to write helpful, thoughtful, specific feedback to at least two of your classmates, because if you're not in the best mood to work on it, then go for a walk, go get something to eat, then come back to it. Or maybe you just need a good night's sleep and you can work on it the next day. The same thing with revision, okay? You don't have all the time in the world, but you do have between now and Sunday to work on the revision. That should be time and space enough for you to reflect on what you've written, decide what feedback you've received makes sense, and start making changes. At the same time, allowing yourself enough time to be able to always look at your paper with a fresh set of eyes and see how it's coming along. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the actual act of revising. I mean, we know what revising is, but sometimes students want a little bit of concrete advice about how to actually go about doing that. First of all, yeah, we start with global issues. So just like with peer review, remember, we discuss big picture issues first, because if there are big picture issues in a student's paper, they need to hear about that first. Why worry about fixing individual sentences if those sentences might not even exist after revision? Because whole chunks of the paper maybe need to be rewritten. The same thing with you when you sit down to revise. You need to work on the big stuff first. Again, this should seem like common sense, but because I do see students, again, they sort of maybe relax a bit too much, or they think that the paper is done, or because they put so much effort into the draft, they feel like, that's it. But if we think back to the writing process that we've been talking about all month, and that was shown visually in the very first go-to session, 3 weeks ago, the writing process begins with drafting and ends with revising. It's something that all writers do. Yes, those of us who write a lot, those of us who are experienced writers, sometimes we can do some of these steps in our head. So I think I've written this to some students in my feedback, but like I'm always brainstorming, for instance, when I'm washing the dishes or when I'm going for a walk. And same thing with revising. Sometimes I know that what I've written needs to be improved, but maybe I'm not exactly sure how to do that. Well, I just, again, create the time and space for me to think about these things. And again, I'll often do it while doing other activities. So yes, experienced writers, maybe they do some of it in their head. Maybe they combine different steps of the writing process and do them at the same time. But all writers revise, okay? There's no such thing as any writer just, getting the words down on the page and then saying, I am done. So you have to come to that realization as well. So yeah, when you begin with a revision, start with global issues. If you have some big picture issues to work on, those need to be fixed first. This is just a reminder of the basic framework of a paper. Okay, so we talked about this, I think, in week 2, right? That we have an introduction. Ideally, you should have a thesis. Okay, and then we have separate body paragraphs that focus on separate points we want to make in that paragraph. And then we have a final paragraph that acts as a conclusion. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we already talked about it during week 2 and because you've already written the essay. But for those of you who struggle with issues of organization and the basic framework or structure of an essay, this is just a quick reminder. Um, Here we're seeing kind of a 5-paragraph structure. Your paper might have more than 5 paragraphs. That just means we have more boxes in the middle here. But yeah, if your paper doesn't have this kind of basic framework, some sort of opening paragraph, some sort of closing paragraph, and then paragraphs in between that focus on one issue at a time. Like that's really basic stuff. So if your paper isn't doing that, well, there's a global issue that needs to be addressed. Okay, and there visually is what I was just talking about: introduction, body, conclusion. So make sure that your paper meets that basic structure. Um, there are a couple methods you can use to help you revise. One method is called the highlighter method. I don't use this very much, but some students love it, so that's why I include it here in this session. The highlighter method is exactly what it sounds like. You'll use different colors during pre-computer times, which I can actually remember because I'm old enough. You would actually grab like markers or colored pencils and do it. Now you can just use highlighting tools in whatever program that you're using. And the goal here is we use different colors to identify different parts of the paper. Okay. So, for example, um, anything that deals with, let's say, well, let me see if I can come up with an example off the top of my head. Let's say one of the points in your perseverance essay has to deal with how your role model dealt with a financial setback. So you would mark in blue anything that had to do with that specific financial setback. Anything that relates to a different idea, you would highlight in a different color. And what we're trying to do here is, if we use different colors throughout the essay, is see if things are clashing. Okay, we should see like items being paired with like items. If they're being mixed up too much, then that's usually a sign that we're not handling things correctly organizationally. Okay, like we would expect. For example, it's really useful with your paragraphs. For example, if your first body paragraph is about X, we expect everything in that paragraph to be about X. And if you use different colors to highlight different pieces of information within your paper, you can see when your paper gets off track. If this seems a little bit confusing, there's another way to go about this. It's in some ways kind of simpler. You sit down with your paper, and right next to every paragraph, um, you try to identify what that paragraph is about. Okay, so right next to your first body paragraph, you would write in the margins what that paragraph is about. If you struggle to identify what the paragraph is about, that's probably a good sign that you're probably not sure what it's about. Okay, and that's also an indication that perhaps the paragraph doesn't know what it's about. That it's just kind of headless information. Okay, like the headless horseman from Sleepy Hollow. It's kind of like a headless paragraph. It's filled with information, but nobody's sure exactly why, because it doesn't seem to have purpose. But if you can go through each paragraph in your paper and successfully identify what the paragraph is about, and then go back to the paragraph and make sure that every single sentence in that paragraph relates to what you think is the topic of that paragraph, then you're in good shape. So that's kind of similar to the highlighter method. Um, Now, the strategy we just looked at with the highlighters deals with organization, which is a big picture issue. Obviously, local issues, editing issues are important. You are expected to proofread. You are expected to work on grammar to the best of your ability. And there's some quick tips for that as well. Okay, so yeah, just a reminder that editing issues are examples of local concerns. First is a technique called the last to first method, and it is exactly as it sounds. You read the last sentence, then the one before that, then the one before that, and so on. And this is a good strategy for identifying grammatical errors. The reason why you read backwards is because it breaks up your ability to just fly through the paper. Your brain actually has this incredible ability to just automatically fill things in. Actually, the truth is, your brain does not read every word on the page. Your brain is so accustomed to seeing phrases, patterns, that it actually fills in things. That's why we can kind of read, usually pretty quickly. It's because our brain is already filling in the blanks, and we're not actually reading every single word on the page. So reading backwards breaks that up, and it forces us to really look at things with more care. The problem when you read from the first sentence to the last is, yeah, your brain kind of slips into autopilot, even if you didn't mean to. Okay, your brain kind of slips into autopilot, and then you might accidentally just read over tons of errors. And it's not because you're being lazy. It doesn't mean that you're not paying attention. It just means that you're not seeing them. Again, you're so used to your paper, you're so used to reading it, that you just kind of fly past those errors. But if you begin with the last sentence and read backwards, your brain and your eyes will be much more trained on the page. And finally, just a common sense reminder: take a moment to step away from your project, clear your mind. There's nothing wrong with that. I do it all the time. Um, Please don't take this the wrong way, but even with grading your papers, I need to get up every so often. I'll go grab some coffee, or I'll say, you know what? I'm stuck in the office for 8 hours. I need to go for a 15-minute walk, and I'll just walk, do a circle around campus, and then come back. And yeah, it clears your mind. It means you can sit down. Your eyes will be refreshed, and you'll mentally be ready to kind of look at things anew. And because this class, again, doesn't occur in real time, you have that ability. Okay. So if you're not doing that, please consider doing so. Although I'm guessing that you guys probably don't need to have your arms twisted to take a break from schoolwork. When it comes to video games, yeah, nobody pays attention to those little warnings that PlayStation, Xbox give about taking breaks. When it comes to that, nobody takes breaks. People just stare at that screen for 10 hours straight as they play their favorite game. But something tells me that when it comes to schoolwork, you guys are probably pretty good at making sure that you take a break every now and then, right? Finally, a quick shill for the Writing Center. I'm going to go ahead and type the Writing Center's email address in the chat box. It is writingcenter@fullsail.com. Real easy. Sometimes people don't know that we have a Writing Center. We do. Take advantage of it. You do not have to be a campus student. We have online tutors who work with students, basically using the same software, GoToTraining. So you can have a one-on-one session with a tutor. The tutor will not proofread your work. They're not going to just identify errors for you, because that means they're kind of doing your job for you. But they can certainly work with you on issues. So if your instructor pointed out that you have a lot of comma splices or fragments, which are incomplete sentences, if a specific pattern was pointed out, and then you look at your paper and you see, gosh, I've never heard of this comma splice thing before, and yet I have like 8 of them in my paper. That might be a good opportunity to schedule a session with the Writing Center and specifically work on that issue. They do require 24-hour notice, so you can't just show up at the last second and expect a meeting. But if you'd like to try it out before Sunday, it would probably be a pretty good idea, because they're not open on the weekends. To get in contact with them either tomorrow or Thursday, to try to get an appointment for either Thursday or Friday. Okay. One last slide, I guess. Revision takes time. Okay, so this is due Sunday at midnight. APA is part of that revision, so don't forget about that. I have students who completely forget to revise the APA issues that might have existed in their paper. So again, it's a top to bottom revision of your work, including the short essay. It takes time. So make sure that you're not putting everything aside until Sunday afternoon when the NFL is interfering with your ability to pay attention anyway. Okay. So yeah, make sure that it's better to work on it piece by piece between now and Sunday. That said, I don't know if people get desperate and they really need extra time, just reach out to me. I can probably offer an extension of a day or two, especially since it's taking me a little bit extra time to get the papers done. I'm not so cruel that I would never give a person extra time, but still, I'd like to see you try to meet that Sunday deadline if you can. If for no other reason, then it's just helpful for you. Like, why would you want to go too far past Sunday? I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to the break. I want to be done with work. I need 2 weeks to sort of recharge my batteries. But yeah, that said, if people do need an extra day or two, just let me know, explain your situation, and I can certainly offer an extension till Monday or Tuesday. Okay, so questions. This is our final session of the month, so you can ask anything that deals with the final project, the final revision activity, or anything that we've worked on all month. If you're comfortable with what we've gone over, you are allowed to go enjoy the rest of your evening. And I thank you very much for attending. And if you do have questions, you can always just send me a message through the FSL platform. But I am going to hang out for a few minutes and answer any questions that people have here. So, for example, William asked, do online courses get a break, or do we just keep going to the next month? No, we all get a break. Okay. So we're in week 4 right now, right? So next week and the following week, we're technically off. I mean, the university I think is technically open one of those weeks. I forget which one, but classes are not in session. Can anybody verify that for me? I'm pretty sure, right? Because classes go month to month, and the January session doesn't begin until we all get back after the first of the year. And it works like this every year. Okay, the calendar always works the same. December is a shortened month. It feels a little bit rushed. It's always over just before Christmas, and then we have 2 weeks pretty much free, and then we all come back for the January term, which begins pretty much the Monday back, whatever that Monday is after January 1st. Yeah, Eric says it's 2 weeks off. Yes, it's 2 weeks off. Jared says his class isn't until January 4th. I'm guessing that's a Monday. So, yeah, that would be like the first Monday after the new year. But, yeah, like it's a little bit confusing because Full Sail is technically open. And for instance, one of the weeks, I forget which one, I'll be on campus. I'll mostly be hanging out and grading a little bit here and there. But it's pretty much a free week. Like for all intents and purposes, the university is not in session class wise for the next 2 weeks. This week, yes, but the following 2 weeks, no. Okay, any other questions? Eric said some nice comments, so thank you for that, sir. But if you have questions, I shouldn't say now is the time to ask them because you can always ask them in a message you send to me. But while I'm here live, ask away. And again, if you're fine, you're fine. I'm not going to force you to stay here and ask questions. So I'll just encourage you to look out for my feedback, which will come to either today or hopefully early tomorrow, and then get started on that revision. The sooner you begin, the better. Okay. Good night, Christopher. Jared says, is APA the only style of writing used at Full Sail? Yes. You will not have to deal with MLA style, which is the other major style system. There are some others which maybe you've heard of, like Chicago. Those are I've never used Chicago before. And there's another one called, I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's like Turabian. But yeah, MLA and APA are like the two biggies. And APA is the only one that's used at Full Sail. So you will never have to worry about MLA, at least not at this school. And that's good, actually. So you're not going back and forth between two different style systems, depending on what class you take. Every class here will be APA. And that's also why it's important to get these things down, because it's not like you get through English class and APA's over. You'll never have to deal with it again. No, you're gonna encounter it in other classes. Some other instructors may not be as nitpicky about how correct you have to be, but they'll want the basics. They'll want you to be able to create a cover page, to be able to create a proper references page, to be able to double text your document with proper margins and proper indentation of paragraphs, right? They're going to want those basics down pretty pat. So yeah, it's not like you get through English and, oh great, never have to deal with APA again. No, you're going to confront it again and again and again. So that's why please take advantage of my APA walkthrough video that literally walks you through the steps. That's why it's called a walkthrough video. Okay. And yeah, really take advantage of this, because if you can get these things down now, you'll pretty much have them in. I mean, you might forget specific steps and have to review them, but you'll get the gist of it down. You'll understand the logic. And I think I wrote to a couple of students that it's crucial that you get the logic down, because if you don't understand the basic logic behind APA, it's going to seem like a mess. It's going to seem like just a bunch of random, completely meaningless rules, and you don't understand why you're following them, and it just seems completely idiosyncratic and confusing. And of course, it's going to seem that way because you don't understand yet the foundation or the logic behind it. But if you take and I'd say it would take about an hour. If you take the time, either with my walkthrough video or the other documents that have been provided. The McGraw-Hill chapters do a really good job. So if you like McGraw-Hill, maybe their chapters explain things in a way that's better than I do. Yeah, if you spend that hour learning APA, then yeah, things will make sense. It won't seem meaningless. It won't seem random. It won't seem chaotic or confusing. It will make complete sense, because I'm telling you, APA is a breeze. It is easy. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the instructor. It really is straightforward and simple. But you need to spend that initial time understanding its logic, or else it won't seem like a breeze at all. It will seem like the complete opposite. Okay, any other questions before I close out the session and get the video processed, just so I can upload it for the people who are unable to attend live? By the way, thanks for showing up, people. We probably had the strongest turnout tonight, and I was a little bit shocked by that because I had to change the registration link at the last second. Okay, Jared says he's good. Sixto, William, any final questions? I'm not trying to rush you guys out of the room. It's just that the processing of the video takes about 2 to 3 hours, so the earlier I can start it, the better. It's kind of a pain because I'm at home and it completely clogs the wireless, so I can't do like fun stuff like play video games online. So yeah, the sooner we can get this upload started, the sooner it can be done. Jared, you're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and close out the session, guys, okay? So if you do have questions, you just get in touch with me with a message, because William and Jared both said they're okay, and Sixto isn't asking anything. So I'm assuming everybody's good then. Yeah, there we go. Sixto just said he's okay. Está bien. Okay. Have a good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close the session and start processing the video. Have a good night.